weren't too many storylines. There weren't too many names to be excited about necessarily. And a lot of that, of course, is because the best products, 3/4 of the best products were, Euroball players, FIBA players. And so it's not the same as some of the other more hyped draft classes where everyone was waiting, everyone was anticipating for so and so to get to get picked up. Like, oh, where's he gonna land? Or like even out of high school, oh, where's Kobe Bryant gonna get drafted? Where's LeBron James going to be drafted? All that sort of thing. So we didn't have that necessarily this year. And even last year, if we remember, it wasn't so much about the others and where they got drafted because everyone was the big storylines was surrounding Victor Wembanyama, and we all knew where he would be drafted. So I say that to now say, when we watch and we dissect how everything happened. Oh, appreciate it, Joe, for retweeting and tuning in. Appreciate it, Joe. Thank you. Uh, Let me know if you want to hop on. But anyway, always welcome, Joe. Always welcome, Joe. But now, when we talk about this draft class and everything that we're seeing, what are the main storylines coming out here? First of all, this morning, Kyle Filipowski, it continues to be a hot button topic, and to me, this shows, and the credit goes here to everything that Duke program is doing because for most, if not for, I think every other program, the everything that's being said in regards to Filipowski and his girlfriend would be known way sooner in advance. And now he's with the Utah Jazz and the Mormon connection there. So it all seems at best very coincident, right? It's all very like it's coincidental. Yes, I don't mean to imply that it was planned or anything like that. So I realize that that's how that could maybe have come off. But right, it's definitely odd. It's definitely odd. But either way, let's stick with the basketball side of things with Filipowski. I'm less interested in the age gap with his girlfriend. Um, I don't know. This is a Utah Jazz team. They can be at times frisky. I don't think anyone's suggesting that they were a Kyle Filipowski away from competing in the West. I don't think anyone's saying that. Oh shoot. Speaking of which, Jordan, hello, hello. Um, what is your thoughts on Milfman and Mormons and Mormonism? And be respectful. No, right? We all watched, and we all enjoyed Book of Mormon, right? We can have a laugh every now and then about these things. But yeah, what are your thoughts, Jordan? And now here we go. Like I said, I don't think anyone is anticipating this to be necessarily a good team next year. I think that's far from the truth. And again, let's evaluate Filipowski coming out. I didn't love him at Duke, and I know that that might sound silly, but hear me out here. Filipowski, not exactly quick laterally. He is someone who can shoot the three, yes, but ideally with someone of that size, wouldn't you want him to have some better low post moves, some better go-to moves? And wouldn't you want him to be able to take and even look for advantages down low more often? That's what I would think I would want out of Filipowski. I don't think that's unreasonable. And there were a lot of games last year when watching him play for Duke. There were a lot of games where his best impact was as a three-point shooter. And with that body type, with that size, and you include also the pace of the NBA, the physical nature and just how much better the defenders are at the next level, I find it hard to believe. I'll be somewhat shocked if Filipowski has an immediate year one impact because of all those reasons. And so now he's in Utah, a place where, let's be honest, there isn't a whole hell of a lot to like about Utah in terms of how they're being run and the overall roster construction. Now, you have Lauri Markkanen. I like him a lot. He's someone who I think clogs up where Kyle Filipowski should probably be. So in an ideal world, I'd have Filipowski um, playing spot minutes for Lauri Markkanen because I don't think he'll be good enough to crack this starting five. So I have him come in a reserve role for Lauri Markkanen and go from there, learn, and keep developing his game. Mainly, either he needs to become either much more crafty or improve his lateral quickness or vastly improve that 3-point shot to where it's where you could depend on it at an NBA level. And then you have Clarkson, Keontae George, um, and Sexton. Now these are so right there could be potentially a role for Lauri Markkanen to crack the starting five, particularly in a long season, right? I'm not dismissing that entirely. But I think it's John Collins too. Um, I think it's fair to say that this is a team that isn't really deep and that doesn't have a whole hell of a lot going for it in terms of talent. What about Kenneth Lofton? He's slimmed down as well, right? But even despite that, I think you would struggle to have him in your starting five. I don't care where he was drafted and I think a reasonable expectation for him is to average about 20 minutes a game, get about 6 boards, and in 20 minutes you want to be around double digits. So, if it was something like 8, 6, and 2 for a rookie stat line, I think that's more than reasonable. Now, if he just is thrown out there and this ends up being a really bad Utah Jazz team and he gets a lot of minutes because of that, then fine, right? Then you could up that number, I guess. But you hear what I'm saying here, I hope. I don't have too much hope for Filipowski either way, and I don't think you should either. Uh, and then let alone that he's on this team where even if you're super high on them, I'm just flatly not. But even if that's the case, then you have to admit they're in the West. It's going to be a gauntlet of a schedule in terms of seeding, in terms of all that. So I just don't see a path forward here. I just truly don't. Now moving on. A lot of people are comparing Bronny James and him being drafted by the Lakers, as we have an itchy ear, him being drafted by the Lakers and everything that's going on within that organization. And to shout out a friend of ours, Jordan, as what he's described as a clown show, which genuinely I've seen it described as multiple times the on the established networks, right? The ESPNs, the Foxes. I've seen that multiple times, that classification of this Los Angeles Lakers. So I think Jordan was just ahead of the curve there, as usual. But moving on, when we see that, immediately there are comparisons to Antetokounmpo. And I saw a social media post in which I saw a social media post in which they were comparing this to that of, the Joneses, and what's going on with the Dallas Cowboys, and having this be a larger discussion on nepotism, and of course, we also what Woj said about I don't want to hear about nepotism, that it's already rampant in the NBA, and so he's not interested in having the nepotism talk. But I want to go in a slightly more nuanced direction on this one. If you're upset that Bronny James got drafted by the Lakers, I think a valid counter argument is look at all of the places where there is nepotism, where you don't even bat an eye. Case in point, and then one other person, before I get too off rail, before I get too off topic, one other person I saw in the Twitter sphere, um, made it try to draw the comparison between this and saying that, well, no other player has been drafted by their father or had their father's blessing on the same team, all that kind of stuff. We'll get to that in a moment. But there is always a degree of nepotism or unearned rising within a company, unearned job, someone who earned a job that was probably unearned, or a promotion that was completely unearned. Right, where you remove the word nepotism, and again, I'm not saying that that isn't prevalent. I'm not saying that that isn't happening, especially in professional sports. But remove the word nepotism and replace it with inside track. Right, there are plenty of times where there is someone probably more qualified or who probably has earned an opportunity, but they lose out to someone who just simply has the inside track. Right, that's part of playing the game. But now, to have an apples to oranges comparison between this and Thanasis Antetokounmpo, I think is entirely appropriate. Because let's remember, admittedly, Austin Rivers, his NBA career was saved by Doc Rivers. And his playing time was 100% increased, was 100% extended while playing with his father, and then he was able to move on, and it looked a little better for Rivers, and we all see how that ended, right? But either way, Coach Rivers saved his son's career. Now, was that entirely earned or not? Well, Austin Rivers had been in the league. He was a veteran, and he had proven to be useful on a roster. But it needs to be said that at that time when it was happening, Austin Rivers was not good. He was 100% out of the league, on his way out the league. But we're all more or less fine with it because of who it is, who it involved, Coach Rivers, and he was a former NBA player. Now let's compare that with the Antetokounmpo brothers. I don't think anyone's arguing Thanasis necessarily deserves an NBA roster spot. When he gets in there, it's more of an antics show. Look at me replacing the word clown. It's more of an antics show, right? It's more of a what is this guy doing? What's going on? But we are seemingly fine with it. Now, do people say unearned or it's only because of his brother? Yeah. But that's kind of where that conversation ends. It's like all of us collectively just accepting it. So now, what about Bronny? Well, I have said multiple times that I thought Bronny should have stayed in college. I mean, he couldn't crack the rotation at USC, the starting rotation, and I think it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be difficult, particularly after he had that heart scare, chest scare, cardio scare. I always thought it was going to be difficult for him to gain any sort of rhythm in season like that without having the full training camp. But here's why I'm and so did he get drafted yesterday in large part because of his name? Did he have the inside track? Absolutely. But here's why I'm mostly okay with this and why I think comparing it to the Joneses or even right there the Rivers situation, or really even bringing up anything else in terms of look at what LeBron's doing, I think that's unfair. And here's why. When you have done more, when you have done something at a high level for such a long time, particularly in the Lakers case, when I think it's more than fair that LeBron James is the only stability in that organization. Now, can you argue LeBron James is bringing some of the instability with some of the decisions or some of the influences that he may or may not have? I think that's fair. I think that's fair, particularly with AD. It's well known that he wanted AD and that he continues to want AD. But a lot of why the Lakers continue to struggle is because of who AD is, both as a player when he is in there, right? He doesn't have that killer instinct. He's not an alpha like that. He's someone who is more passive. He's not going if everything's going great, then perfect. But he's not someone who you could rely on to flip the script in the game. And that's if he's healthy, right? Because there are a bunch of moments. There are a whole lot of games, minutes where you hold your breath, first of all, anytime he gets at any near any player. And he just flatly misses a lot of games too. So is part of that LeBron? Yeah, sure. And clutch sports because they are known for wanting to go after the max every possible penny that they can. Yeah, sure. So I'm not giving LeBron a complete pass in terms of the dysfunctionality that we see in LA. But I will say this. He being LeBron, continues to be one of the better players in the league. He's still relatively available and he still delivers at least personal numbers at a high level to where you could say, all right, you can build a team around him today. Now, we're not talking 5, 6 years from now, but I'm just saying for the upcoming 2024, 2025 season, I'm okay with trusting a team on the court to LeBron. He's shown that he is good enough still to do that. And at the very least individually. And say what you will, is it the other players? It's hard playing with LeBron. Is that part of it? Maybe, I don't know, but LeBron is typically a distributor first. Don't know why we struggled on that word. Versus just being a ISO player who then tries to look for his own shot. So I don't you definitely need the right fit around LeBron, but I don't understand why that can be a little more difficult than what it seems to be. Um, for me, the roster issues are more about their pigeonholed with the LeBron and AD pairing. And who else you can have as a teammate if AD is your main guy next to LeBron. That's to me where more of the roster issues are. But anyway, even if we want to dismiss or if we want to overlook all that for now, the front office is really what where a lot of issues are. There's no debating that. So and case in point, even this, the drafting of Bronny, even this, I think, is in large part going to be credited to Clutch Sports because of all those reports that were coming out of them saying to not draft Bronny, otherwise he'd go to the NBL. So we say that now to think of what LeBron has given to the game, everything he's earned, and what he's done for the Lakers. He has provided a sense of stability, of at least hope, and at least of relevance. From where even though we will still laugh at them, rightfully so. Shout out Jordan. Oh, Joe, you have no idea. You have no idea how challenging speaking can sometimes be. um, so now we're here where I think LeBron has earned this chance because this is something truly historic. We've never quite seen, and I don't think we'll ever quite see again, where someone is just in a position to play with their son at the professional level. So again, was this an unearned track? Would he have been drafted? Shoot, would he have left college if it weren't for LeBron James being his father? I highly doubt that. But now let's also look at it on the other side. He was recruited heavily by USC and Ohio State. One other, I forget who. I'm talking about his final three. And then he looked decent at USC, especially toward the tail end of this season, especially defensively. Not a bad jumper, has a good shot, good athlete. So for sure, with this inside track, and we all acknowledge that he is having something of an inside track, but we are also acknowledging that this isn't the first time how it, where that's happened. And if you want everything to be 100% a meritocracy, then I could hear you there. I'm not having that conversation for today. With that being said, I think he is an NBA caliber athlete, very possibly an NBA caliber defender. And now we have to see if he can, which is ultimately what's more important in the league because of how the rules are. Now we have to also see if he can be someone who can fit into an NBA caliber offensive system. And it won't hurt that he gets to go, when he calls up his dad, they can talk shop, right? So that won't hurt. So I say all this to say, should he have been drafted? Probably not. And am I too upset? Am I going to be rushing to the Twitter sphere and completely saying, "Oh, this is unfair, nepotism," and what about someone else more deserving? Well, when it's close, the benefit of the doubt can go through a bunch of different factors. There's nothing. If you're about as talented as the next person, what's to say what the true separator should be? And they're different every time. So if in this case a true separator between people drafted in the second round, now some people drafted in the second round do phenomenally. Shout out Joe, who reminded us of Gordita Jokic. But a lot of people drafted in the second round make it to the NBA Summer League, and we never hear from them again. So I say all that to say I'm largely okay with the Lakers having spent a second round draft pick on this. I'm largely okay with everything that will happen. And it'll be up to LeBron, really, if we're being honest, to navigate what this will look like. I don't think he would pressure JJ Redick into giving his son playing time because he wants to win ball games. But I think being in that atmosphere, being in that environment can only help Bronny. And so therefore, is this ultimately better than going back to college and having um, hypothetically paying college for another year? It very much could be. It very much could be. So we will see. That this is something where I really can't wait to just see it unfold. And I'm okay with it happening. But as I think our good friend Jordan would say, uh, we'll also be here for the laughter. We'll be here for any other potential future fallout. And then yeah, Joe bring up the Griffies. Valid, valid. Um, we had this debate a little while ago. I would say it's a little different. It's a little different, baseball and basketball, in terms of what's demanding on the body. But yeah, Jalen Brunson, second round pick. Yep. So yeah. My comment there was only that some second round picks work out. Again, shout out Joe for bringing up Gordita Jokic. A lot of them don't also. So, it's it every if you're in the first round, it's a 50-50 pick if you're going to work out or not, and the further down you go, the less it becomes a 50-50. So if you use a late second rounder on someone, I'm okay with that for something like this. But anyway, one last piece of news before we get out of here is it was just reported by Clutch Points that oh, by the way, didn't I tell you Joe Kolek to the Knicks? Did I tell you? The great pickup for your Knicks. Great pickup. Last thing before we get out here, Russell Westbrook is expected to leave the Clippers in free agency. Not that that's a surprise, right? I don't think anyone's shocked by it. But it had more to do. It had more to do, I think, with everything that's going on with this roster construction specifically. And Russell Westbrook reportedly wants to have more playing time and have more of an influence in the system. And I think that's fair enough. And so he did have a $4 million player option, but it looks like he will not be opting in. Instead, he will be a free agent. And the Clippers, it's known that they are looking to wheel and deal and figure out something. So this experiment is over. Must be said, the experiment of Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, and Russell Westbrook, I would argue went better than anticipated. I don't think it was a complete disaster. It wasn't great, and we didn't see too hell of a lot in terms of postseason success. But I wouldn't classify it as a complete, garbage dumpster fire. I wouldn't go that far. Um, if they had run it back, the same team, I would have put it under room for improvement. But Westbrook's going to move on. And I mean, the rumor mill is so strong in terms of Paul George that and right now from Windhorse, he just reported that the Clippers aren't offering Paul George a max contract. So yeah, now you're going forward into next season with Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. I'm gonna go ahead and say that they need a third guy. If they're gonna make any noise in the playoffs, I am going to go ahead and say that they need a third guy. That they can't. That will not be a recipe for success. Again, this we'll call it a big four for now, just lack of a better term. Again, this experiment with Harden, Westbrook, um, George, and Leonard. Sincerely, I think it worked way better than what people should have been expecting. When you consider where those players are in their respective careers, I think it's more or less fine how it all ended. Obviously, they wanted to win the championship, but yeah, that I don't think that was a realistic expectation. We said that from the beginning, and then looking for Lowry. Oh yes, yes, thank you, Joe. Look at Joe keeping me on track even when he's not on the screen with me. This is what I was going to. With that part of the report, Chris Paul to the Clippers. So now you have Paul, Leonard, and Harden, assuming that everything else stays the same for now. Right? Who knows? Everyone might want out. We could be looking at a future Portland Trail Blazers situation. Now, wouldn't that be something? And you don't have Jerry West to save the Titanic anymore, because as great as Jerry West was as a player, what he has done as an executive for this Clippers team, that is, if not more impressive, if not as impressive, more impressive. And right, Jerry West put this Clippers team in a position where they weren't the laughing stocks, and he widened that gap, and it was very clear that the Lakers are. So shout out to him. But anyway, so now if we have Lowry, uh, I don't really want to talk about Kyle Lowry. um, I really don't want to talk about the Kyle Lowry, but what did Joe say here? 60 seconds out, second round picks. I become the price to get rid of. um, you're not wrong, and I'm only laughing, Joe. I'm only laughing, Joe, because that's 100% accurate. So he says, shout out Reggie Jackson to Marway Jr. And I'm only laughing about the picks thing because first of all, that's so accurate what you're saying. It's like, hey, do you mind eating this contract for us? Oh, sure. Do you have a second available? Fine. So that's just how business is done. That's like, it used to be considered the throwaway, but now it's just that's just what you have to do to get a deal done. And fair enough, I guess. I think it's largely because of what I said, right? Second round picks, they can hit, they can be useful. You can also use them as trade bargaining chips later. But also, a team largely is okay. They're like, okay, fine, I'll throw that in if that's what gets a deal done, because of the success rate largely of second round of just round of just NBA picks in general. How many NBA picks in general stay on the same team and go on to have a successful career NBA career with that team? So, right, let's also look at all the successful rookie free agents, people who were drafted. So, right, so that's why I'm largely okay with it. But Joe is apt in saying, absolutely spot on, saying, yeah, you all right, you want to play ball? Where's your second rounder? But I only laughed. I only laughed because I remember. I don't know why this doesn't have to do with this necessarily, but Joe and I did 3.5 hours on NBA on the draft night on the NBA draft night, and I only laughed because I wonder, like, all these second round picks, like when is it going to be the time where we see and now Carl Anthony Towns is traded from Minnesota to Brooklyn for a 2045 second round draft pick. Yeah, right. And they threw in a player option for, whatever. I'm only laughing because as a Spurs fan, I literally have to wait 7 years now and just spewing in anger, waiting to see if the 2024 NBA draft was a success or not. But anyway, we'll dive into that another day. Um, I was going. Oh, right, right, right. Chris Paul. I love Chris Paul as a player, and I want to see him win a championship so bad. Just as someone myself who I'm not the biggest guy in the world, right? I loved watching Chris Paul play. He's fun to watch, and he's someone who has definitely paid his dues. Um, so I would have loved to have watched him win a championship, for example, with the Phoenix team he was on, because he was the point guard. He would have gotten a lot of credit for it, and everything would have been good in the world in terms of that. He's someone who deserves a championship. I don't think him going, and um, I have seen not just on this report, but other places where apparently him going to the Los Angeles Clippers is not only a possibility, but looking very likely. Again, assuming that it's him, Harden, and Leonard, I don't love that at all. With all of those three players, we have playoff concerns in terms of how they performs, not being able to get over the hump. Obviously not Leonard because he did it in San Antonio, then Toronto. But as of late, it's not so for him specifically now, we still have the same playoff concern, but it's mostly due to injury, just like those other two. So in terms of the actual playoff concerns getting over the hump, obviously I just mean Harden and Paul, more so Harden. But with all three, we now have legitimate injury concerns. So if you could give me, I don't know, 70 games with those three and a clean playoff run, first of all, I want to see what your bench is looking like because you'll need that. Um, and all three, smart, high IQ players would be willing to give up the ball, I'm assuming, and play within a given system. But let's all be honest too about this. Uh, Chris Paul's at his best with the ball in his hands. Kawhi Leonard is best on the low block and ISO situations. And James Harden is best when he's able to give us 50 dribbles and then do a one-legged step back three. So that's the only thing that I would be very wary of anyone saying, "Well, this is going to be a good big three." Um, my money would be on no, it will not be. And I think that big three would be less successful than the past seasons. Again, we'll just call it Big Four for lack of a better term. But that's how I see it. Please let me know in the comment section where I was right, where I was wrong, and where I was incredibly wrong. Please let me know, and we will attempt to amend our ways, but there are no guarantees. Shout out Joe for commenting here and keeping me in line. Shout out Jordan for reminding us about some of the buffoonery that goes on throughout sports. Until next time, my friends, we will be on later.